Hey and welcome back to the Woodcrafter. Today's episode we're going to look at the K-clamps from Bessey, that's a parallel clamp, and the accessories. If that sounds good, stick around. Now if you've followed the channel recently, you know I've upgraded my clamping collection. The old clamps I got a bit tired, they were cheap, they were falling apart, and very often they caused more problems in my glue up than I actually solved, so it was time for an upgrade, and I went through for the Bessey products. Full disclosure, I bought all these with my own money. I saved up my pennies and I bought them, so this is not a sponsored video by Bessey or by the people I bought them from. So all the products I'm going to talk about today came via toolchimp.co.uk. Now I've no affiliation to that company. I didn't even know they existed until I started to buy the Bessey products, but the customer service is great, the delivery was great, the communication with them is great, and the packaging is great as well. So what's not to like? Great range of products, well worth checking out, toolchimp.co.uk. And incidentally, I did say hello to them and let them know I was going to give them a shout out in the video, and they told me if you go along to their website now and you sign up for their newsletter and you're a new customer and you spend more than £100 with them, they will give you a £10 thank you discount on your order. And do me a favour, if you do go along, just let them know that the Woodcrafter recommended them and sent you. We can keep track of that, and who knows, we might be able to get some sort of collaboration going down the line if we put enough business and interest their way. So in this video we're going to start off by looking at the clamps themselves, the features, the specifications, the sizes that you can get. We'll then look at the versatility, some of the key things that you can do with these clamps. I then want to talk about the accessories you can get for them and show how they can be used and add value in the workshop. I want to finish off by looking at the price point of these and how that compares to other products in the market space. So let's start by having a look at the clamps. Bessey do 8 clamps in the overall range. They do a 300, a 600, an 800, a 1000, 1250, a 1500, a 2000 and a 2500. Now those numbers are in millimeters and they indicate the clamping capacity of the clamps. This one here is the 600. That means that between this jaw and this jaw I've got 600 millimeters of clamping capacity. And if I were to actually measure that fully extended, I've actually got 644 millimeters. This one here is the 800 clamp. If I were to measure this one, I've actually got 847 millimeters, and if I measure this one, I've got weighs more than 1,000 stops here on the clamp. So when Bessey gives you the clamping capacity, it's genuine. Actually, these are bigger than the clamping capacity. No matter which size clamp you buy, you get the same features. They come with these bright red bodies. These are a very, very high quality plastic. And on this you can see there's 1, 2, 3 pieces of black plastic. These are actually jaws. Now these are designed so they will not mark the surface. They're a non-marring jaw, so you're not going to get any black plastic on your workpiece. And also they are ever so slightly pliable, so you don't actually get any clamping marks. So there's no need to use coils when you're using these clamps. And to show you what I mean, here's a piece of pine, well known for its softness. I'm going to come in and clamp up that piece of pine between the jaws, and I'm going to tighten that down as much as I can. Now this will exert 8,000 newtons of force between those clamping jaws, so that's a lot of clamping pressure, and that really is in there tight. And I've not marked those surfaces in any way whatsoever. So when it talks about a non-marring surface, boy is it correct. Now these are also designed so glue doesn't stick to them, so if you do get glue on the jaws during clamping, it's a very, very easy clean off. And these are actually removable. And if you look at the profile of these jaws here, you can probably just about see it's actually a dovetail type arrangement, and that just slides onto a corresponding lip here on the jaws, which means you can take these off to replace them and they're easily available, or to actually clean them up, and then they just simply clip back on there. They're pretty secure, so they're not going to come off in use. Quite a nice feature. And as I was saying, there's 1, 2, 3 of these. So obviously in this configuration, that makes sense. But this back jaw here actually comes off and turns around. There's a small plastic cap here. Don't need tools, just pushes off. Like so. And then this jaw will happily slide off the clamp. And that can be reversed. And now I'm using this jaw here and this jaw here, and that makes a very nice spreader for doing things like dismantling joints, boxes, drawers, usual sort of things you'd use a spreader for. Also pretty useful if you wanted to clamp something up against a flat surface, and that would do that quite nicely for you. Now what makes this pretty special as a clamp is the number of surfaces that this head actually grips to. It's actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 serrated edges, and the metal mechanism inside here grips to those 6 surfaces, which gives it an incredibly robust clamping experience. It also means that once you've got this vertical, this head doesn't slip. No matter where I put it, that's going to stay in place. Now that's really useful. The number of times I set my old clamps to a certain position, put them here for storage and swung them around, and the heads moved and slid and fell off during a glue up. So it's quite a good feature that actually stays exactly where it is. To adjust the clamps, it's all about this handle. You can lift the handle up, and that allows you to pull the jaw backwards. Push the handle down, and that allows you to slide the jaw forwards. And you simply twist that to clamp up, and you can see how much movement there is as that's pulling in that jaw. As I say, fully clamped, this is going to give you 8,000 newtons of pressure between the clamps. Now, although Bessey call this the K-clamp, most of us are just going to call this a parallel clamp. The reason we call it that is because these jaws will always stay parallel. So it doesn't matter if you're clamping at the very top of the jaw, or you're clamping at the bottom of the jaw, or you're clamping underneath the jaw, or you're clamping at the front of the jaw, or you're clamping at the back of the jaw, you're going to get the same clamping pressure all the way across, all the way through your piece. Now, I didn't realise that that was that exciting until I did the panel glue up on the cabinet I made to store these things. Normally when I do a panel glue up in my old clamps, I allow for movement in the joints. I allow a slight bowing. And even though I put opposing clamping pressure on, I always get a little bit of unevenness in the panel. So therefore I used to allow about a 5 to 6 millimeter variance on the thickness of the stock, so I could bring it back down to flat. I did that with these panels. It was as flat as you like, as flat as you like. So that clamping pressure transfers incredibly well from the parallel jaws to making sure the pressure across your joint is also consistent and parallel. That removes that bowing and that cupping and that slight separation of joints that you may have seen from cheaper clamps. For that reason alone, I think these things are awesome. The clamps also come with these little rests here that just simply clip on there, no tools again, and that just means that when your material's on there, it's resting away from that serrated edge or the metal edge, because some woods will react to a metal edge and can put stains on your material. So that simply keeps it away from the bar, allowing you to go ahead and clamp your piece. Now while I've got that piece of wood, I just want to show you something. I'm just going to put a number of these little rests on from different clamps. Rest this piece of, what's that, 9mm MDF. Now typically when you clamp that, you'd expect this to bow, it flexes quite well. But that parallel pressure, and I was talking about it not just being parallel at the edges, but parallel across your joint. If I tighten this down now, I've tightened that down quite a lot, more than I normally would for clamping. And look, can you see? Can you see? That wood is still lying flat against those plastic stops, and I've not clamped that down in any way, so that wood has not bowed under quite a lot of clamping pressure, and that's because of the parallel action between this jaw and this jaw that's transferred right down the centre of that piece of wood. Now you'll notice that this little foot at the back that just stops this carriage falling off has got a hole in the bottom, and you'll notice that these also have holes in the bottom as well. And what you can actually do is use these as a clamp. You can bring this to the front of your bench like so. You can drop in a convenient clamp. Now sadly the MFT clamps are too thick, but Bessey do make a table clamp, and that actually clamps this to your bench. And one of those features is you can now use this as a vise. So if you don't have a vise, support your work like this, and you've now got a vise that you can work on for whatever reason. I've not bought those clamps because I don't need them, because I've got a different clamping option at the front. But if you didn't have that, then being able to fasten this down with the appropriate table clamps is not a bad idea. But where these really come into their own is when we couple them with the accessories that are available for these clamps. Let's have a look at the accessories and put them through their paces. I think the first accessory, and the one that a lot of people would be interested, is this. It's extruded aluminium, and it's heavy, it's a thick piece of aluminium. And this is known as the K-Body Extender. And it does what it says on the tin, it extends your clamping capacity. Now I did think long and hard about buying bigger clamps than the 1000mm that I've got, but I decided to go through this instead. What these do is extend the clamping capacity of your clamps. Take off the end plug, slide off the clamp, reverse the clamp on one end, go second clamp, put that clamp on one side. Now this has got these two quite big bolts sitting inside here that we can just simply take off. Now the bar itself is actually profiled. You can see it's got this sort of hourglass type profile inside there. And that's actually to strengthen the bar. So when you're tightening these up, no matter how much you tighten that, you will not get deflection in this bar. And if you look inside the extender itself, it's got a similar profile. So this simply slides on to the end. And as you'd expect for the money, it's well engineered. That just simply goes up inside there. And that one then simply slides inside there. Align the holes. And now you have an extended clamp. Now in this configuration you obviously do lose some clamping room. I've lost this part here of this clamp. But remember when we measured at the beginning, and these are the 600 clamps, we had much greater capacity than 600. So I'd expect to be getting 1200 clamping capacity out of this if I've joined two 600s together. Makes sense. Now you can see here on this joint, the two ends of the clamp don't actually butt together here. So there is a bit of additional clamping capacity brought here. So if I actually measure this, I'm going to get 1000mm to there, and spinning my rule around because it's not long enough, a further 360mm to there. So I've got 1360mm of clamping capacity out of that. 600 plus 600, that's not bad. The total is greater than the sum of its parts, I think is the expression, which is nice. Now obviously you do lose some practicality because this will only come up to that point there. So if I wanted to clamp anything underneath this, I'd have to drop this off and take it back to the 600 clamp again. But if I wanted something that was longer, fantastic. Now the top of this is actually flush with the top of the rail, so if I was actually using it on a piece of stock, that wouldn't cause any distortion of the stock. And obviously if I'm using the feet, it sits well below those black feet as well. Anyway, when I put that on my 1 meter capacity clamps, I'm getting just over 2 meters worth of clamping capacity, which is more than enough for my needs in this shop. And that saves me some money on buying the 2 meter clamps. And obviously I can mix and match sizes of clamps to give me different configurations. So I do think that this is one accessory that is highly, highly recommended and worth getting with your clamps. Now every now and then you may want to glue up an angle such as this. Maybe you're making an A-frame for something, maybe you're doing something at the side of a chair, or angles on a table design that and you want to be able to glue a joint up such as this, or one even that's got an angled piece in the middle. Now the problem of course with that sort of joint is how do you clamp it? And you can make templates and use screws and little bits and bobs and jigs and what have you. But if you try and do it without that sort of thinking, what happens is your joint goes skew in your clamps, and as you start to apply clamping pressure, it will pull flat to your fixed surface, but then it sort of kind of goes a bit strange here on this joint. So I've only got clamping pressure right at the edge of this corner here, and if I clamp that down, I can see the wood beginning to twist and buckle a little bit inside that. Now Bessey has a really neat idea, and that's these chaps here that are basically a pivoting clamp head. You pull off your black non-marring surfaces, and you replace them with these swivel heads. Now they use the same sort of kind of dovetail type configuration to slot on there, and they're incredibly firm. And if you wish to, you could stack multiples of these onto that head. In fact, I think I can get about 3 on each, so it gives me quite a good tilting size clamping area depending on what you're clamping. And then I think it's pretty obvious what happens next. I line my joints up, and straight away you can see that the face there has pivoted. Bring in my other clamping face, and now I can tighten that joint down quite nicely. And you can see, and you can see how that works now. They've taken up the shape of the piece. There's no glue on that and no other support. That's purely that clamp, again on 9mm MDF, and it's giving me a beautifully flat joint on that surface. Gorge. If you actually go and look at the Bessey website and have a look at those, it actually shows you quite an interesting compound joint that they're gluing up. It's like a box with sloping sides on it, and it shows how they really come into their own. So it's not just good for those flat panels I've demonstrated here, it's good for 3-dimensional boxes with awkward shapes and angles. If you're making a child's crib, traditional child's crib, boy were they going to be valuable to you. So yeah, that's another useful accessory I think in the range. Here's a typical situation where you want to just glue up a dovetail box. This is just an old pine one I was messing around with, and typically you want to be able to get a couple of clamps in here across the middle here and clamp across that joint that's okay, and clamp across that joint that's okay. But now you also want to be able to clamp in this direction. Now these are the smallest clamps I have in the Bessey range. As I start to clamp here, I'm now beginning to fight the weight of the clamps, and it's not so hard on this little box here, but if that was a bigger box or more awkward or longer, that would start to give me 1 or 2 issues. Now what Bessey have come up with is these little devices here, and these are known as framing squares, and you get 4 framing squares in a set. And if you look at these framing squares, they're very, very simple. You can see there's 2 long holes that go all the way through on one edge, and if you turn it round, the other edge, there's 2 holes that go all the way through that are shorter. You lay 1 clamp in a long edge, like so. Another clamp in the long edge, like so. And then you can lay these clamp on the shorter slots, like so. And now you can go ahead and you've got somewhere to glue your box up. Now I have noticed a bit of an issue with these. I mean, they do work. If you've got something that's reasonably long, like this box is, I can bring that clamp in there, and that works quite well. Then I can bring this clamp in here, like so. It's quite easy to adjust, as you can see. And now I've got all the clamping pressure I need in this direction. Now, the problem goes, this box is very, very narrow. So if I bring this clamp and this clamp in, now these clamps now begin to tip because of the weight of these. And sadly, the little feet, if you turn them over, aren't thick enough to stop that happening. There's nothing to support the back of the clamp. And again, it wouldn't be too much of a problem in this situation, but imagine messing around with a larger box. Now the simple solution is use shorter clamps, and these are the 600 ones. If I had a 300 one, I wouldn't have all this weight here, and this wouldn't tip. But I don't want to go out and buy more size clamps. These 600s are a nice size for my bench and for my workshop. I've got the capacity for longer, and these 600s will do quite a small capacity. But I don't particularly want all this tipping going on here. So rather than buy another set of 300 clamps, I just put some more of these castles. And now I can just simply drop one here at the back of my clamp, like so, and one here at the back of that clamp. And now these clamps are sitting perfectly parallel to the table, which means the jaws are sitting parallel to the workpiece. Just throw in a little bit of coil, a few coils here, so I can actually reach the clamping surface. And there you go. And gluing up your box is now no harder than that. And because these don't actually clip to it, I can now knock off these clamps and I can take that away and allow it to dry and get on with the next activity in the workshop. So now we've had a look at the clamps themselves, we've seen the features, how versatile they are, the accessories and how they add value. Let's talk about the elephant in the room and talk about the price. Bessey are high quality, therefore Bessey are not cheap. The 300 that I've not got here, if you buy them singly, it's going to cost you £42.73. However, they do multi-packs. Bessey do sell multi-packs, and if you're going to buy these, that's how I advise you to buy them, because they are cheaper. A 2-pack will be £81.17 for 2. A quad pack, £155.52 for 4. If you buy the 4, that's coming out at £38.88 per clamp. The 600, which is this one you see here, is £52.93. Buying the pack of 4, £44.69. The 800 that you can see here is coming in at £59.85 for a single. If you buy the multi-pack, £53.66 for the pack of, in the pack of 4. This one here, the 1000, is £66.20. If you buy the multi-pack, £60.79. The 1250 that I've not got is £72.94 singly, £67.35 in the multi-pack. The 1500 is £80.26 for a single one, £76.41 if you buy the multi-pack, and £107.99 will get you the 2000, £105 for the 40. I've not managed to find the 2500 one singly. If you buy the 4 quad pack, it's come out to £121.22 per clamp. So it's not a cheap investment, but I do think it's well worth the money. And when I compare the quality of these clamps with the cheap ones I was using in the past, these are going to see me out in my woodworking career, and they really have made a difference to my workflow. The simplicity of the glue up and the quality of the glue up as well has completely changed. They're not the only game in town anymore. Axminster do a range of parallel clamps, and also my friends over at Sauter Shop also do a range of parallel clamps. Sauter Shop recently entered to the market. Axminster have been going for a while. So you see, there are savings to be made if you go for the alternative Axminster or Sauter versions. And I've got good reports from them. And if you live near to any of those stores, you can go along and have a look. Where your problem comes is the accessories. Axminster don't do any accessories, so you've not got those joining pieces, you've not got the angled things, and you've not got the towers either to go onto the Axminster range. Sauter do a framing set with theirs, and actually they do a kit that comes with a framing set that's quite a nice view. And that's about it for today. I can think of nothing else to say about the Bessey clamps apart from the fact I love them. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope it's been of use. Stay safe, and I'll see you soon on The Woodcrafter.